If you're a mid-level software engineer right now, 3 to 8 years of experience, solid skills, decent salary, maybe a senior title or close to one, this video is specifically for you. Not because I want to scare you, because something is happening to your tier of the engineering workforce that most people are either exaggerating into apocalypse or dismissing as hype. And neither reaction is useful. What's actually unfolding is more specific, more structural, and more consequential than either camp wants to admit. Let's talk about what the mid-level engineering role looked like just a few years ago, because it's worth remembering what you signed up for. You were the backbone, the translators, the people who took vague product requirements and turned them into working systems. You wrote the integration code.
You maintained the services, you reviewed pull requests from juniors, and translated architectural decisions from staff engineers into something the code base could actually absorb. You weren't the visionary and you weren't the apprentice. You were the engine room, reliable, skilled, expensive enough to matter, but not expensive enough to terrify the CFO. Companies needed dozens of you, hundreds sometimes. The entire scaling model of software organizations for the last 20 years was built on the assumption that mid-level engineers were the critical mass that made shipping possible. That assumption is now being stress tested in ways that should concern you, not panic you, concern you. Here's what changed. AI coding agents, not autocomplete, not fancy syntax suggestions, but genuine autonomous agents, crossed a threshold sometime in the last 12 to 18 months. Tools like Claude Code, Cursor, Copilot's agentic mode, Devin, and a growing list of others can now do something that was theoretical even 2 years ago. They can take a prompt, propose an architecture, write the implementation, run the tests, debug their own failures, and ship working features. Not perfectly, not every time, but reliably enough that the economics of software teams are starting to shift. Engineers at Anthropic and OpenAI have said recently that AI writes 100% of their code. Mark Zuckerberg has predicted that by the middle of this year, AI will write most of Meta's code. Now, you can dismiss those as marketing. You can say, these are AI companies talking up their own products. And there's truth in that skepticism. But here's the thing about dismissing signals from the companies that are building the frontier. They also happen to be the companies that employ tens of thousands of engineers and set hiring trends for the rest of the industry. When Meta says it needs fewer engineers per feature, other companies listen. Not because Meta is always right, because Meta is always watched, and the data is starting to reflect something real. Stanford's Digital Economy Lab, analyzing millions of payroll records from ADP, found that employment for software developers aged 22 to 25 has fallen nearly 20% since late 2022. SignalFire tracked a 50% decline in new role starts for people with less than 1 year of experience across major tech firms. The Burning Glass Institute found that job postings requiring 3 years of experience or less dropped from 43% in 2018 to 28% in 2024. Overall software engineer postings fell 49%. And here's the part that should make mid-level engineers pay very close attention. Specialized developer roles, the bread and butter of the mid-level tier, got hit hardest. Android developers, Java developers, net developers, iOS developers, web developers, all saw job postings drop over 60% compared to early 2020. 60%. That's not a soft market. That's a structural contraction. Now, I want to be honest about something because this channel doesn't deal in clean narratives. The picture is genuinely complicated. A Harvard Business Review study from January found that 60% of companies had cut jobs in anticipation of AI, but only 2% because AI was actually doing the work. Read that again. Most of the layoffs attributed to AI weren't because AI replaced anyone. They were because executives believed AI would replace someone eventually and decided to get ahead of it. That's a different problem. It's not automation. It's anticipatory cost cutting dressed up in AI language, and there's more nuance. 55% of employers who laid off staff because of AI now regret the decision. Some companies that replaced human workers with AI agents have quietly started rehiring, especially in customer-facing and content roles where the AI output turned out to be brittle, generic, or just bad enough to damage customer relationships. So the replacement story isn't clean. It's not a straight line from AI agent exists to engineer gets fired. Reality is messier than that. But here's why that nuance shouldn't make you comfortable. Because the forces reshaping the mid-level engineering role aren't just about whether today's AI can do your exact job today. There are three forces converging, and each one alone would be manageable. Together, they're reshaping what it means to be a mid-level engineer in ways that won't reverse. Force one, productivity compression. When a single engineer using AI agents can do the work that previously required 3 or 4 engineers, the math changes, not because you got fired. Because when someone on your team leaves, the role doesn't get backfilled. When a new project spins up, it needs a smaller team. When budgets tighten, the mid-level layer is where the compression happens first. You don't get a dramatic layoff announcement. You get a slow thinning, fewer open roles, longer hiring freezes, teams that used to be 12 becoming teams of 7, then 5, doing roughly the same output. This is already happening. It's quiet and it's accelerating. Force 2, skill commoditization. The tasks that define mid-level engineering competence, writing solid implementation code, debugging, building standard features, maintaining services, writing documentation, handling integrations, are precisely the tasks that AI agents handle best. These aren't trivial tasks. They require real skill, but they're also the most structured, the most pattern-based, and therefore the most automatable. The premium you commanded for being reliable at these tasks is eroding. PwC data shows that AI-skilled roles now command a 56% wage premium. General software engineering salaries, they grew 1.6%. The market is telling you something. It's not rewarding the skill of writing good code anymore. It's rewarding the skill of orchestrating systems that write good code. Force 3, the broken ladder. This is the one almost nobody talks about, and it might be the most consequential for mid-level engineers specifically. The traditional engineering career worked like a ladder. You started junior, did slightly too hard work alongside someone experienced, built mental models through struggle and failure, and gradually developed the judgment and intuition that made you mid-level, then senior, then staff. AI is breaking that ladder, not at the top, but in the middle rungs. When a junior developer asks Claude for help, gets well-structured code, ships it, and closes the ticket, the sprint velocity goes up. The learning doesn't happen. The engineer never built the mental model of why that code works, what trade-offs it embeds, how it behaves under conditions the AI didn't anticipate. The ticket closes faster, the depth doesn't develop, and that means the pipeline of people growing into genuinely experienced engineers is narrowing, which sounds like good news if you're already mid-level or senior, less competition, right? But it's not that simple, because companies that see fewer people developing into strong mid-level engineers don't respond by valuing the existing ones more. They respond by asking whether they need mid-level engineers at all, or whether they can restructure around a smaller number of senior engineers supervising AI agents. The broken ladder doesn't protect you. It eliminates the tier below you and then starts questioning whether your tier is necessary. So let me give you the realistic risk assessment. If you are a mid-level engineer whose primary value is reliable implementation, taking well-defined tasks and producing working code, your risk is high. Not immediate firing high, but slow erosion high, fewer roles, longer job searches, salary stagnation, the feeling of being professionally adequate but economically squeezed. If you are a mid-level engineer who operates at the boundaries, dealing with ambiguity, making architectural trade-offs, understanding business context, navigating complex system interactions, handling incidents where the AI's suggestions are plausible but wrong, your risk is meaningfully lower, because those are exactly the things AI agents still fail at, not because the technology can't improve, but because those tasks require the kind of contextual judgment that comes from scar tissue, from having been wrong before in production at 2 in the morning. Let me tell you what the smart mid-level engineers are doing differently. And I want to be careful here because just upskill is the laziest advice in the world. So let me be specific. First, they're becoming orchestrators rather than implementors. This isn't about learning prompt engineering as a buzzword. It's about developing the skill of managing AI agents the way a senior engineer manages junior developers, reviewing output critically, catching subtle errors, understanding when the AI solution is technically correct but architecturally wrong. knowing when to trust the agent and when to override it. This is a real skill. It's not trivial, and it's becoming the new definition of engineering competence. Second, they're moving toward the parts of the stack where context matters most: infrastructure, reliability, security, performance engineering, systems that interact with the physical world, domains where the cost of AI being subtly wrong is high enough that human judgment remains essential. The further you are from write me a CRUD endpoint and the closer you are to figure out why this distributed system drops transactions under load, the more durable your position. Third, they're building business fluency. This one surprises some engineers, but it shouldn't. The engineers who will thrive aren't the ones who write the best code. They're the ones who understand why the code matters, who can sit in a room with product and design and contribute to decisions about what to build, not just how to build it. AI agents can write features. They cannot decide which features matter. They cannot navigate organizational politics. They cannot read the room in a strategy meeting and redirect a conversation away from a bad technical decision. That's human work, and it's increasingly the work that justifies an engineering salary. Fourth, and this is uncomfortable, they're being honest about their actual skill depth. A lot of mid-level engineers have been in the role long enough to be comfortable, but not long enough to be genuinely deep. They've been productive, they've shipped features, but they've relied on patterns more than principles. AI is about to expose the difference between engineers who understand systems and engineers who learned enough recipes to be effective. If you're in the second category, this is the moment to close the gap, not by taking a course, by deliberately seeking out the hardest problems on your team, the ones you'd normally avoid, and fighting through them before the opportunity to fight through them disappears. Now here's the counterpoint I promised, because intellectual honesty matters. It's entirely possible that the current moment overestimates AI's trajectory in engineering. We've seen this before. Technologies that seem like they'll consume everything often plateau, find their level, and become tools rather than replacements. 55% of employers regretting AI layoffs is a real signal. AI agents that produce confident, plausible, wrong code are a real limitation. The gap between demo impressive and production reliable is wide, and it may stay wide for longer than the hype cycle suggests. That's a fair objection, and if you're betting your career on it, you might even be right. But here's the thing about career risk. You don't need AI to fully replace mid-level engineers for it to fundamentally damage your position. It just needs to reduce demand by 30 or 40%. It just needs to make teams smaller. It just needs to make hiring managers think twice about backfilling a role. It just needs to compress salaries enough that the financial calculus of being a mid-level engineer in a high cost of living city stops working. You don't get replaced, you get squeezed, and the squeeze is already measurable. The companies that are paying attention are starting to restructure around a model that looks like this: a small number of senior and staff engineers who understand systems deeply, a layer of AI agents that handle implementation, and a thin layer of engineer operators who manage the agents, review the output, and handle the exceptions. Notice what's missing from that model: the large mid-level layer that used to be the center of gravity. That doesn't mean mid-level engineers disappear overnight. It means the role transforms. The ones who survive in it will be doing a fundamentally different job than the one they were hired to do 3 years ago. Less writing code from scratch, more reviewing, orchestrating, debugging AI output, and making judgment calls. Less time in the IDE, more time in the system. Machine learning engineer postings are up 59% from pre-pandemic baselines, while general software engineering postings are down 49%. The market is drawing a map. It's telling you where value is concentrating and where it's draining. You can argue with the map, or you can read it. I don't say any of this to be grim. I say it because the worst thing you can do right now is nothing. The second worst thing is panic pivoting into something you don't understand because a LinkedIn influencer told you to learn Rust or start a startup. The best thing is to look clearly at where you are, assess honestly what your value is built on, and start making deliberate moves toward the the parts of engineering work that remain hard, contextual, and human. The mid-level engineering role isn't dying, but the version of it that existed from 2015 to 2023, the version where solid implementation skills and a few years of experience guaranteed you $160,000 and a stable career trajectory, that version is fading. What's replacing it is a role that demands more judgment, more breadth, more business context, and more comfort with AI as a collaborator rather than a competitor. That's not a death sentence. It's a mutation, and mutations favor the ones who see them coming. The engineers I worry about aren't the ones watching this video. They're the ones who stopped being curious 2 years ago, who treat their current skills as sufficient, who assume that because they survived the last round of layoffs, they're safe for the next one. Safety in this market isn't a state you achieve. It's a direction you move in continuously. If this landed, stay close. There's more to say about how specific engineering specializations are being reshaped differently and where the pockets of durable value actually are. That conversation is worth having, and it's one we'll keep building.